Protests in Iran continue on a large scale, with social media frequently reporting that military and police forces are joining in the anti-government protests. In Lorestan province, in the city of Borujerd, police waved at the crowd and withdrew. Across Iran, police officers are refusing to suppress the protests, with some security forces even defecting to join the demonstrators. A member of the Basij militia said in a video on the 7th that he refused the orders of the Iranian authorities to shoot protesters who they claim to be violent. Some Iranian police officers have also stated that they would never shoot at the people. However, the Iranian government has not acknowledged defections, and mainstream media has not reported on them. There are videos claiming that the local police force in Abdanan, Iran, has joined the people in resisting the central government. If confirmed, this could mark a major turning point in the nationwide unrest. Other videos show Iranian military and police fleeing charged towards them. On January 7th, Iran's exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi addressed the Iranian military and the police in Egypt. He said, "You who have donned the military uniform to defend the Iranian nation now face a historic choice. In these days when the brave and unified people of Iran are building and writing history, my question to you is, on which side of history will you stand, with the criminals or with the people?" In Iran, people are using loudspeakers to play Pahlavi's warning to the military and police. The recent protests in Iran have been escalating, demonstrations and strikes spreading to most cities across the country. 2 cities in western Iran have already been seized by protesters, despite the Iranian authorities intensifying their crackdown by using tear gas, shotguns, and force. The protests and strikes continue to spread across dozens of cities. The BBC have analyzed that at least 17 out of Iran's 31 provinces have seen protests, representing the biggest challenge to the regime since 2022. BBC reports that the actual number of locations is likely much higher, as they have only verified footage from certain provinces. Protests have also broken out in 11 other provinces. According to human rights organization HRANA, protests have spread to 27 out of 31 provinces in Iran, covering 88 cities. The widespread geographical distribution shows that this is not a localized incident, but a deep nationwide crisis. Despite harsh crackdowns by the authorities, which resulted in at least 35 deaths and nearly 1,200 arrests, the protests have not died down. On the contrary, they continue to spread. A post on X on January 8th stated that the scale of the protests in Iran are still escalating. On January 7th, protests were reported in 88 cities. By January 8th, this number had increased to 111 cities. The regime of Supreme Leader Khamenei is at its most dangerous moment in nearly a decade, and the Iranian people are closer than ever to victory. On January 8th, the Iranian protests entered their 12th day. Opposition groups announced that protesters had completely taken control of 2 cities in western Iran, Abdanan and Malekshah, near the Iraq border. The people took to the streets to celebrate and chant slogans against the supreme leader. On the evening of January 7th, an armed group attacked a major headquarters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, located in the western city of Borujerd. The IRGC is one of the most powerful and core armed forces in the Iranian regime, and now its base has become a target. On the evening of the 7th, protesters in office of the local representative Shahrud Khorasan province, citizens defeated the military and police. An opposition channel in Iran announced on January 6th that they had appointed a new commander for Malekshah city. Meanwhile, in Karaj, people in the Fardist district burned down the Islamic City Council building on January 6th. This building is an important power center for the regime. On January 7th, Isfahan province, citizens destroyed cameras and chanted slogans like Pahlavi Restoration. This is the decisive moment. On January 8th, in Gilan province, protesters against Khamenei's regime captured an IRGC agent who had infiltrated the protesters' ranks. Videos show protesters toppling a statue of Qasem Soleimani, the former commander of the IRGC Quds Force. He was revered as a national hero by the Islamic Republic. Soleimani was killed in a U.S. airstrike in January 2020. On January 7th, in the city of Borujerd, almost everyone was out on the streets. People put down their work to protest Khamenei's regime. Local Iranian blogger revealed that the streets were packed with people during the day, and the crowds only grew larger at night. However, the protesters are facing a dangerous situation. On the evening of January 7th, footage from the city showed Iranian security forces dealing with the ongoing protests, using methods far beyond standard riot control. The video showed personnel in full hazmat suits and masks standing on military vehicles and moving through the city streets. On January 7th, exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi issued another statement, noting that the Iranian regime was terrified and trying to cut off the internet again. However, Iranians are still managing to connect through smuggled Starlink devices. Pahlavi said, "Know that our communication will not be cut off, whether through hundreds of thousands of Starlink devices in Iran or through the networks of Iran International and Manoto." Reza Pahlavi is gaining increasing support, especially among young people. Many have taken to the streets, shouting his name and publicly showing their support. Pahlavi has expressed his willingness to lead a transitional government before holding a referendum. Sources familiar with the situation have indicated that opposition voices are emerging within the regime. The regime is facing unprecedented challenges, further compounded by the economic pressure from the sanctions imposed by the Trump administration. There are clear signs of divisions within Iran's leadership. President Masoud Pezeshkian has admitted that the demands of the people are legitimate and has promised dialogue and reforms, but Supreme Leader Khamenei has blamed the protests on external enemies. Trump posted to social media, "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go." Recently, the U.S. deployed 12 military aircraft to 2 bases in the United Kingdom, sparking speculation about whether these aircraft could be deployed if the situation in Iran escalates. Late on January 7th, a drone entered Iranian airspace near Kermanshah in western Iran, only to be shot down shortly after. Related footage has been circulating online, but officials have not yet released information about its origin or purpose. Some believe the drone was likely sent to assess air defense response times and locate positions, possibly originating from Israel. On January 8th, in the Sadr region of Tehran, protesters against Khamenei's regime took to the streets, occupying public spaces and chanting slogans such as "Death to Khamenei" and "Death to the Dictator." The scale of the current protests is astonishing. The immediate trigger for the protests was the rapid devaluation of the currency, which directly impacted the daily lives of ordinary people. The accumulated economic pressure eventually transformed into dissatisfaction with the government. On a deeper level, Iran's economic struggles have not developed overnight. Long-term international sanctions, corruption, mismanagement, and the improper allocation of resources have all contributed to the current crisis. Dr. Sanam Vakil, director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House in London, pointed out that Iran is facing a deadly triple crisis: economic collapse, loss of political legitimacy, and military threats from the U.S. and Israel. These 3 crises are intertwined and reinforce each other, creating a vicious cycle. Iran is viewed by the U.S. and many of its allies as one of the key sources of terrorism in the Middle East. Khamenei has served as Iran's supreme leader since 1989, making him one of the few remaining dictators in the world today. He is also the Chinese Communist Party's most important old friend in the Middle East. In January 2016, CCP General Secretary Xi Jinping made his first visit to Iran, where the 2 countries established a comprehensive strategic partnership. In 2021, China and Iran signed a 25-year cooperation agreement, with China committing to invest $400 billion. 90% of Iran's oil exports go to China. China also covertly supports Iran's nuclear program through technology, personnel, and equipment. Iran is experiencing an unprecedented multidimensional crisis, which many overseas Chinese are comparing to the crisis faced by the Chinese Communist Party. A recent video posted by a blogger claims that cities and towns across China have increased patrols resembling paramilitary-style units. They're equipped with transparent shields, capture forks, submarine guns, and military police dogs. Military commentator Xu Ke believes that China's economy is on the brink of collapse, with high unemployment rates and worsening social security. The political and economic situation in China is becoming increasingly severe, and the probability of the people being seen as enemies is rising. The CCP is preparing for the repression of the population. Therefore, eliminating the CCP is the only way forward for the Chinese people. However, it is crucial to determine whether the CCP's military and police will stand with the people in critical moments. On October 13, 2022, just days before the CCP's 20th National Congress, Chinese citizen Peng Lifang publicly protested against CCP leader Xi Jinping. He raised banners at Sutong Bridge in Beijing. Before carrying out the protest, Peng had posted an open letter titled "A Letter to Fellow Citizens Across the Country." He called on national military and police forces to be as brave as Cai Li Jiejun and Tang Jiyao, referring to rebels from Yunnan province active during the Republic of China. He said, "Do not aid the dictator. Do not serve the dictator. Cannon fodder for the dictator." The Sutong Bridge incident quickly became a global symbol of dissent. It is also seen as the catalyst for the nationwide White Paper movement. Calls for the CCP's military and police forces to not serve the dictatorship have continued to emerge. Recently, the nonprofit China Action published an open letter on its website. It was written by a former military leader to the Chinese military, urging them to recognize the situation and choose to stand with the people and the times. The open letter states, "Remember, the Chinese Communist Party is not China. It does not represent the entire country, nor does it represent the people. What you need to protect is not the Communist Party, but the country. You must swear allegiance not to an organization, but to the people of China." The author draws a parallel with the Soviet the 18th of August incident, when the Soviet Vice President Yanayev, Defense Minister Dmitry Yazov, and KGB Chairman Kryuchkov formed a State Emergency Committee to place Gorbachev under house arrest, sent the military into Moscow, occupied key transport routes, and surrounded the Russian Federation government building. He said that if the Soviet soldiers had followed their superiors' orders, Moscow would have turned into a bloodbath, the reformist and democratic forces would have been crushed, and the Soviet Union's collapse would have been delayed indefinitely. However, Soviet soldiers did not obey their superiors' orders. The tanks stopped, the soldiers did not fire, and within 3 days, the coup attempt was dissolved. The author, writing as a retired veteran, appeals to active duty soldiers, urging them to recognize the situation, see the truth, and as the darkness over China begins to dissipate, join the first rays of bright light. On Taiwan's National Day, which commemorates the Wuchang Uprising of 1911, a user on X published a call for a second Wuchang Uprising, urging, "It is time to rise up. A second Wuchang Uprising should be launched." Due to the CCP's tight control over its military, there are doubts about whether they can actively organize an uprising. However, some members of the military still have independent thoughts, and from the CCP's increased control over military personnel, it's evident that there's an undercurrent of unrest within the barracks. At the end of 2024, the CCP's military newspaper published an article criticizing the lax management of soldiers and emphasizing the need to address violations, such as using software to access overseas websites. This indirectly confirms that CCP military personnel are secretly accessing free information. During their service in the Chinese Communist military, many soldiers began to feel the internal flaws of the system. The CCP's officer system is weak, and there are very limited opportunities for promotion. The military is deeply influenced by a culture of corruption, with the selling of military positions being widespread. Following the downfall of the two prominent old military tigers Hu Caiho and Guo Boxiong, the personnel chiefs Zhang Yang and Miao Hua, who were appointed by Xi Jinping, also fell due to corruption. Since Xi Jinping came to power, he has launched anti-corruption campaigns throughout his 3 terms, yet corruption continues to surface. In the past 2 years, many of the generals taken down were those whom Xi himself had promoted. Xi's close associate, Zhong Xiaojun, who had never served in the military, was promoted to the rank of Major General and given control of the military's central operations. However, due to involvement in corruption, he was transferred to the National Defense University as a political commissar, and recently he was removed from that position. Xi Jinping has demanded that the military follow the party's command, be able to win battles, and maintain good conduct. However, Canadian-Chinese writer and senior commentator Sheng stated that corruption in the CCP's military leadership has become institutionalized. Mid-level officers perform tasks passively, and lower-ranking soldiers are merely forced to obey, with neither real combat capabilities nor strong will. She referenced the China-India border conflict in recent years, but still wanted to maintain its authority. As a result, CCP soldiers became sacrificial victims. After the conflict, the CCP desperately blocked casualty figures. She believes more soldiers will realize that they're not fighting for the country, but for the interest of the highest CCP elite. Wang Yonghong, a former CCP military officer who fled to the U.S., stated that although the CCP military brainwashes soldiers more than ordinary people, the brainwashing is not always successful. In his case, after serving for 10 years in the military, the CCP failed to brainwash him as they wanted. He never joined the party during his time in the military, and later became openly anti-party. Wang Hongyong joined the military in 1989 and later attended a military academy, eventually becoming an officer. After leaving the military in 1999, he worked for a state-owned enterprise, where he reported the corruption of his superiors. He participated in the 2013 New Citizens Movement and was arrested in April of that year, sentenced, and later arrested again. He fled to the U.S. in 2018. Independent commentator Du Zheng revealed that last year, that some officers in a particular CCP military region were frustrated by the poor state of the military, and they were considering taking action. They may choose a time of heightened tensions, such as the CCP's potential military action against Taiwan. They may be waiting for an opportunity, as it is difficult to act due to the strict vigilance of the CCP. Chinese writer Sheng Xue noted that there are still people with a conscience in the CCP military, including those who seek freedom and democracy. While they may not become the heroes of a military uprising, they could be a factor in the political shift in China. Sheng Xue writes, "When a true political change arrives, they will step forward, not to suppress the people, and may turn their guns around. This situation is not uncommon in history."